Okay, see, good thing came out. Anyways, we missed the first 5 minutes of the class recording, so I apologize. But the idea again, there has to be reverence of Hashem, and then comes love for Hashem. Reverence is again the foundation. If there is no reverence at all, and just love, yeah, I love Hashem, or I love doing what I feel is important, what I feel makes me feel happy, then it's good, it's nice, but it's not called what he calls avodah. Avodah means service of Hashem. Servitude starts by acceptance of Hashem's sovereignty, standing in reverence of Hashem. Within that, he says many different levels. He says, but we're not all that great spiritual people that are constantly aware and live by that awareness. So Alter Rebbe says it's not all or nothing. It's if you can have it in your emotions, then at least have it in your mind, meaning at least understand the concept. And then when you do the mitzvot, when you do pray, take a moment and meditate. So even though you feel that you don't have that passion, the enthusiasm that comes along with serving Hashem, standing in reverence of Hashem, yet it's still considered servitude because you are still in your mind, you're understanding where you are, who you are, and in whose presence you are standing. So having that knowledge, having that concept of understanding it is, by definition, is also considered good. It's fine. It's acceptable if you want to understand, is my service up to par? Now, that's where he gets a little bit more. He says, what happens if you don't even have that? I'm lacking the power to always to have that meditation and contemplation and understanding of reverence in my day-to-day activity. I think about God. I can't think about God too much. I don't have that in me. I'm distracted. I don't understand it. And so I gotta do the mitzvot. I gotta do tzedakah. I gotta do Shabbos. I do it. I'm doing without thinking, without even understanding. That there's a God and there's a relationship and there's me standing in His presence. I just do it because I'm doing it. I enjoy doing it. So he says, the very least, a person, whenever you do a mitzvah, and on the flip side, whenever you when you withhold from doing something that's not appropriate in Hashem's eyes, ask yourself, why are you doing it, or why you are not doing something that's inappropriate? And just ask that question. What motivates you to do a mitzvah? So, and in a sense, what gives you strength to hold back from doing something that's inappropriate? So if you don't have the knowledge and the reverence of Hashem in your life at all, then it's free for all. You do whatever you want. Whenever I'm in the mood. So he says that type of person, he should contemplate, at the very least, the concept of just like people, human nature is that in front of somebody else, if somebody's watching, right? Let's take something very mundane. The way you eat in front of people is typically different by most people than when nobody's watching how you eat. Right? There's a certain behavior that comes along when somebody's watching. Just to many people, right? Good morning. I'm talking to a computer screen, but you can come in. I'm talking to wonderful people. Today, nobody showed up in person. Everyone's on Zoom, but Alex just walked in. Take a seat. So, right? Some of you are on Zoom, but your screens are closed, correct? I can't see you. And perhaps you are sitting with a beer right now and your feet up and, and you're having, and which is fine, do it because you can have it because hate. But if your screen will be on, you maybe get dressed better, you behave differently. It's human nature. Everyone understands that. So the Alter Rebbe pulls out the last card out of the hat. He says, if you are not so spiritual mature yet, or you don't have that intense feeling of God's presence, at the very least, just think about how do you behave in front of somebody else. Try to think that Hashem is watching all the time. That doesn't take much meditation. Hashem is watching everything that happens. There's an open camera. So just have that the concept in your mind is already considered reverence, Kabbalat all, and with that you can go ahead and know that you're doing the mitzvah, you're on the right track. Okay, that's that. And he quotes from the Talmud. By the way, when the Talmud, he quotes here on the bottom. Where is that? We'll go to bottom 507. Let's take over here. Tanya now cites a proof from the Talmud that such a basic feeling that someone is watching, so I need to behave, could be considered actual reverence of God. As Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to his students as a blessing on his deathbed, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was one of the greatest scholars, greatest spiritual giants in all of Jewish history. It was and when you read his story, and he lived in very difficult times in the end of the Second Temple when it was about to be destroyed. And he's sitting on his deathbed and he's giving his last sermon or his last address, the last instructions to his students. What do you think he will tell them? Look what he says. He says, may it be God's will that you revere heaven as much as we revere humans. And when his students complained, is that all? That's all you're giving us? He replied, if only it would be so much. You should know that when a person commits a transgression, he says, I hope no man sees him. Basically, Rabbi Yochanan's brilliance is telling that humans, in a sense, are more afraid of a fellow human than God himself. There's a certain shame that we have, or a certain embarrassed into something in front of somebody else, which he does. Let that amount of shame or reverence, so to speak, you should have that in regards to relation to how you relate to Hashem. Now that's just he says that's the beginning. That's obviously a very in a sense a superficial reverence. But if you just have this inner respect, then the rest of it you can build on. Some people, and if I may add, they think, and they think they're spiritual advanced, and they have that reverence of Hashem. Yet, practically speaking, when it comes to actions, they would be more afraid to transgress in front of a fellow person than in front of the presence of Hashem. Why is that so? Because it's hard to us visualize Hashem watching us. It's very easy to visualize someone's watching us, right? Especially in today's day and age, right? There's cameras running all the time. Everything that you type, every tweet that you did, it is always going to come back to haunt you. Look at the political field, right? Now they're pulling out something he said in 1992 that he was a teenager. Okay, so people are afraid today to write anything. They're afraid. And to do anything, because if I'm walking, by the way, if you come to Chabad, there's about 13 cameras recording. You should just know. Right? Don't worry, I'm not holding you hostage now. Point is, we are aware of that. We're afraid of that. Are people who they don't want to go on a plane. I know people who don't go on a plane because they know when they go on a plane, that means they have to buy a ticket. That means the government knows where they are. They knows the credit cards. They know that in the airport, and that you can think they're criminals. They're not criminals. Just I don't want to have a trace. So I think that's what that's what he's saying here as well. If we just try to take that model and think about it, how Hashem is always watching us. And it's not the ideal relationship we want to have. It's not a relationship that's standing, as he's going to say soon, standing, I'm afraid of Hashem. It's not about fear of God, standing in reverence of God, which means, as we spoke last week, said in Yiddish, when you're standing in front of greatness, you automatically want to behave in a way that's befitting. Like we said in Yiddish, as my parents used to tell me a lot, when I didn't behave, I didn't behave sometimes. They wouldn't tell me how bad I am, give me a punishment. They'll tell me, you're such a good child, you're such a good boy, you're having a shama. It's not befitting for you to behave this way. That was a very empowering in the presence of Hashem, in the presence of my parents, we get in presence of other people. You have to behave a certain way. All right. Now, kind of, he takes a switch of gear, because what's happening now is on page 510, he's going to go back to bring out a beautiful idea about the power of a mitzvah. And what I like about how he diverts in this chapter is, till now we are focusing very much how our mitzvahs, our relationship is solely between me and Hashem. Now he's going to say that mitzvahs is not only a relationship that empowers and has that unbelievable connection that it affects through the mitzvah, but also that it has an effect on collectively on a fellow human being. When I do a mitzvah, my soul is also connecting to a fellow soul, and that soul, the old souls also get connected to Hashem. So let's read this on page 510. And after this idea of the power of a mitzvah, which brings a very deep mystical concept, and maybe I'll do a little introduction before we read it, so we don't get lost. We have to come to the second part, because part one is reverence. Part two is what? Love. Is love for Hashem. It can't stop just standing like a soldier. God's watching me, standing reverence of Hashem. Got to be love. There got to be that deep commitment, deep passion, deep expression, emotional expression of me want to be absorbed in Hashem's presence. How many names are there to God? Anybody know?
72.
72. That is correct.
99. According to
99?
Arabic.
72, 42. There's many different numbers in the Zohar. That mainly those big numbers are already what I would call rearranging the same letter, the same words in different order of the letters. In general, there's 7 names. There's 7 names. One and it's when we talk about 7 names of God that we find in the Torah, for example, Elokim, or Adonai, or Keel, Tzvakot, Tzivaot. So all those names, why is it important to know? You're not allowed to say Hashem's name in vain, right? You're not allowed to utter Hashem's name in vain. You're not allowed to write, if you write one of the 7 names on a piece of paper, you're not allowed to discard that piece of paper. Even in English, we try to put a like G-D, because if I write G-O-D, I'm writing God's name, then I can erase or throw this paper in the garbage. That's in Jewish law a very important topic, because it goes into the commandments Don't say my Hashem's name in vain. One of the names that is used a lot. It's actually debated. It's actually one of the names, but more of a expression of Hashem's presence is the word Shekhinah. Shekhinah. So we know that we have. What does Shekhinah mean? What's the translation of Shekhinah? Anybody?
Like the glory, the
Bride.
This is
Bride.
right, but glory is not the right translation.
Bride. It's spirit, bride. Basically. Okay.
I give you a hint. We have the first temple that was built in the desert, or we call it English tabernacle, right? In Hebrew, it's called the Mishkan. Mishkan, Shekhinah, are the same root, meaning means Shekhinah means dwelling.
Oh.
Translation of Shekhinah is dwelling.
dwelling.
Yes,
Oh,
from the word shochen, or if you're an Israeli, you know shochen is a neighbor. It's all connected to the word dwelling. Mishkan, Shekhinah. Shekhinah is Hashem's dwelling, Hashem's energy that dwells in this world. In generally, Shekhinah is also written in the feminine. It is connected to Shabbos. Shabbos is a time where Hashem dwells in a stronger presence. We say that word many times in the Lecha Dodi prayer that was composed by the Kabbalist. Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala. Oh, my beloved, towards my bride. A bride is also connected to the word Shekhinah. A bride under the chuppah, bride and groom, we make a chuppah. It is the Shekhinah that dwells around them. They put a veil over her face. It is the Shekhinah that envelops her. So in grammar, Shekhinah is feminine. Women, their soul, their godly soul is more presence, more dwelling than men. By men, it's a little bit more aloof or more not as conscious. Now, when we talk about Shekhinah in general, refers to God's energy that envelops the universe. What does that mean? When we talk about God's energy, God energy, is it infinite or is it finite? Obviously, it's infinite, correct?
Yes.
Infinite. Now, infinite in Hebrew, we refer to infinite light. We call it light in Hebrew is or, right? Or is light. Or Ein Sof is the infinite light. Higher than that, God is not the infinite light. God is higher than the infinite light. God's essence is beyond infinity, because infinity cannot coexist with something that's finite, correct? Otherwise, it's not infinite. So imagine, it's hard to imagine, if you have before I get to one more time, infinity and infinity don't go together. Either it's infinite, or it's finite. Which one is it? In other words, if I have now we're talking about the Powerball again, right? So you have what's the Powerball up? $2 billion. To a lot of people, that's infinite amount of money, right? If you win the Powerball tonight, you walk away with $1 billion, right?
it's ridiculous.
Infinity is infinite. Infinite is nothing. Is what is closer to the number of infinity? if there's such a number? $1 billion or $1? Which one is closer to the number infinity?
Actually, neither one.
Neither one. You can't say that $1 billion or trillion is closer to the number infinity, because infinity doesn't relate to something that's finite. It cannot relate. If it relates to something that's finite, then it's by definition not infinite. Make sense?
Do you mean relate or mean synonymous? Because as something can relate to it, it doesn't mean that it's synonymous with it.
Okay. But where I'm going to is Hashem's presence, Hashem's essence is infinite.
Right.
There's no limits in God's presence. So in order for Hashem to create something that is limited, that is finite, it must come from something that is above infinity or something that is below infinity. So when we're talking about God, God is a beyond infinity, had a will to create a finite universe. So Hashem had to take the light, his infinite light, so to speak, and conceal it and create or filter a light that is considered, quote unquote, finite. I know it's hard to grasp, but I want you to hold on for a second. So in order for Hashem to create a world, Hashem in order to create us, it comes from a lower level of Hashem's light. So in other words, there is the essence of Hashem, there's the infinite light of Hashem, and then there is something called filtered down to a finite level. Light that has enveloped itself in a finite level. By analogy, it doesn't take for example sunlight, right? The sunlight, extremely powerful. Does the sun does the light of the sun get affected where and how it shines onto the universe, onto the planet Earth, for example? Does it make any difference in the sun itself?
No.
No. Who does it make a difference to?
Yes.
To the recipient, to us, right? If we're too close or it's too strong, it affects us. Every sunlight affects us. You see what's happening? It's in a sense, it's a visual, so to speak. In Kabbalah, use that analogy, where there is no change in the sun. The change is in the recipient. When we say in God's light that there's the essence and there's infinite light and there's the finite light, these are not any changes that are within God's existence. These are changes for a recipient to be able to absorb or to coexist, so to speak. So when we're referring to God's presence in the universe, that God created the world, and God has, in a sense, God created a human with a body, with an incarnation, with an animal soul, a godly soul. All those energies that animates it is from a level called Shekhinah. It's not the essence of Hashem that is enveloped itself in this universe. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. It would explode from the intensity. However, we are explaining this from a logic, we're explaining it from a logic way of thinking, right? We're kind of trying to do like 1 + 1 is 2. So infinite light, finite light, the essence of Hashem. So now we're setting the rules. Hashem has no rules. Hashem our rules that we make up, God supersedes those rules. And just follow. God had the desire to fuse Shekhinah light, which is in a sense limited light, to have the ability to fuse what we call the body of the universe, which is the Shekhinah light, to the essence of Hashem. To make a hybrid, to make a shidduch, to make a marriage of something that is in a sense, the ability to have a vessel that can receive God's light in a limited way, yet be able to connect to something that is beyond infinite light, which is the essence of Hashem.
Would you equate it to something like a cloud as just a metaphor?
One second, let me finish my last point. Sorry. So
No.
again, God had the desire that the way he is, in, so to speak, in his core essence, without any limitations, without any filters, without any downgrade, so to speak, to ability to have that, have a marriage between that level, that intense level, with a level where everything in order to create and to be in existence had to be limited. How does that come together? How can we bring that together? God had that desire to bring that together. And you can take the guess out of my mouth. What is the connector? What is the connector? To draw down the essence of Hashem within the Shekhinah level that we all live and exist and breathe. Anybody? What's the glue that makes the marriage? Huh?
Mitzvot.
Mitzvah. The mitzvah.
All right, that's two.
Great, Larry.
That's what I said.
Who else said Leon? That in an infinite nutshell is what a mitzvah is all about. The mitzvah is the God giving us the ability to connect finite to beyond infinite, to Shekhinah level, to the Atzmos level. How does this happen? Because what is the mitzvah? What is a mitzvah by definition? As we learned in Tanya, it is the will of Hashem. It is a will of Hashem. That if I fulfill God's will, where is the source of will? We know and learned in ourselves. Willpower is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, essential soul power that each human possesses. More than logic, more than emotions. God's willpower, when we have God gave us a gift to connect to him through his will, that when we fulfill his will, we connect to the essence of Hashem. That's why before you make a blessing, bring this together out. Before we make a mitzvah, any mitzvah you make, there's always a blessing, right? For everything, there's a blessing. You light the Hanukkah candle, you make a blessing. Light the candle Shabbos, blessing. You eat the bread, blessing. Every single blessing begins the same way. What is it? You all know it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. So what does it mean? Blessed are you, Lord, universe, right? Baruch is blessed. Atah is you. Adonai is one of God's name. Elokeinu, another God's name. God. Melech, king, ha'olam of the universe. Asher kiddishanu. What does that mean? Who commanded us? Asher is who? Kiddishanu. Who sanctified us? Kiddush, kiddishanu, from Kiddush, made us holy. Vetzivanu, and commanded us. Al mitzvat shofar. Al netilat yodayim, to wash our hands. What are you saying? Blessed are your Lord. First of all, who are you to bless Hashem? Hashem blesses us. Why are we blessing Hashem? And what is the connection? When I wash my hands, I'm blessing Hashem. So let me say this, and this is so critical and so foundational. And we taught this many times, so some of you should know this already. And everything I just said will come now full circle. And if you say a blessing, if you can just do this little meditation. So Baruch, a blessing means to flow. Blessing means a flow, right? To draw down. If I bless you, I want something should fall on you. Something should come on you. Bless Baruch is I invoking a energy to flow down from Hashem. From where? Atah. Atah means you. Why do I say Atah you? Why not Baruch Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam? What's Atah? Atah refers to the essence of Hashem, the you of Hashem that is not defined by any names. So I'm trying to, by me doing the mitzvah, what I'm saying is, through this mitzvah, God, I am drawing down the essence, the level from the highest level of the essence of God to Elok Hashem, to Adonai, which is the infinite light. Elokeinu is the finite light, the Shekhinah. Melech, king, who reigns Ha'olam, over the world. Basically, the progress of the highest level, the essence of Hashem, to the infinite light, to the finite light, into the universe. I'm bringing down this essence of God in this world. How? Via me washing the hands, because I'm fulfilling a mitzvah. It's this marriage. This is what we're gonna say here. I didn't make this up, by the way. So let's read this. It's fascinating. It's a whole different. It's deep. It's deep, but it's fascinating because it's not what you think about a mitzvah, right? You think a mitzvah is a good deed. You know, it makes me feel good. It's much more powerful. It's extremely powerful. So let's see now. Let's read a little bit inside. Page 510, section 9. Your mitzvah connects all souls with Hashem. And one more thing. I'm sorry, I can't hold myself back. I keep saying one more thing. That's where reverence Hashem has to come in. And if I don't do the mitzvah out of reverence of accepting Hashem's sovereignty, then I'm missing the whole idea of what a mitzvah is all about. That's not serving God. That's doing a mitzvah because I feel good, or I call it tikkun olam. Tikkun olam, in its true essence, is exactly what we just learned. To fix the world means to make the marriage of bringing God's essence into the universe. And God gave humans the job to do so. Why? Because in essence, we humans are exactly the same idea. We have body, which is Shekhinah, and soul, which is the essence of Hashem, that Hashem planted inside of us. We are that marriage inside, and our job is to take that marriage, that hybrid between God's essence and body and Shekhinah, and implement it in every aspect in our life, in every interaction, in every spot of the universe. Section 9, your mitzvah connects all souls with God. Up to this point, we have discussed love of God as a personal longing for connection. Tanya will now expand discussion to include how your soul root, which is intricately bound with all the souls of Israel, connects to God on a communal level. However, our sages of lesser memory have taught, a person should never exclude himself from the community. Your soul is not an isolated fragment. It's deeply connected with other souls. This awareness ought to be part of your kavana, which is a meditation, when observing Torah and mitzvot. Therefore, when worshiping God, your intent should be, in addition to everything stated above in this chapter about love, you ought to have a further, more esoteric intent, to merge with and attach to God not only your own particular soul, but also your divine soul source, which is one and the same as the source of the souls of all Israel. Your soul has different layers and identities. Sometimes we stress its direct connection to God, saying that's a piece of God above, like in chapter 2, famously. But in this chapter, we're going to discuss another element of your soul, its worldly compatibility. Which, by the way, when he said in the source of my soul, what is my soul? What is a soul? As we learn in chapter 2, God blew a living soul into the nostrils of man. The God blows, so to speak, which means that a soul is a fragment of God himself. It's a piece of the divine. In the divine, by definition, there is no pieces. There's no piece, there's no division. Which means that in the source of all souls, we are all one. In the source of all souls, we're all interconnected. We're all part of one entity. So it's not just my responsibility to connect to Hashem for my own personal spiritual enlightenment. I have a responsibility towards all the other souls. the fact that your soul fits in your body and speaks its language shows that it has a worldly side. The worldly side of your soul is rooted in a divine energy that has been diminished and veiled so as to be compatible with the world. The source of the worldly side of all souls is the breath of his mouth. Psalm 33:6. When speaking of the inner identity of your soul, how it's a piece of God, the Tanya stressed how God blew into his nostril the breath of life. Genesis 2:7. From the innermost depth of his being, a deep-rooted inner energy. But since we're speaking in this chapter about the worldly layer of the soul, how the soul becomes part of the world, right? How the soul fits, so to speak, in the body. It's not referring to the essence of the soul, which refers to the God belowing, but here refers to the breath of his mouth. The Tanya quotes a different verse: with the breath of his mouth, all the hosts were made, a word which speaks of more superficial elements of creation, the host. And the source of the worldly layer of the souls of Israel is from a diminished worldly divine light, which is called what? Shekhinah, due to the fact that it inhabits shochenes and is enmeshed in all the worlds to give them life and to sustain them. So all the energy in the world, in the worldly dimension of your soul, emanates from Shekhinah, diminished energy. The only way to access an energy which is not veiled or diminished is through a mitzvah. A mitzvah represents the marriage, so to speak, of two types of energy. On the one hand, it occurs in this world, so it's powered by the worldly energy of Shekhinah. On the other hand, that mitzvah is the undiluted divine will which expresses God's other worldly undiminished light. And it's precisely this Shekhinah worldly energy from which the power flows to you to physically speak the words when you speak words of Torah, or the power to perform the act when you do a particular mitzvah. It gives us also understanding why a mitzvah is a physical act. Mitzvah is not a thought. Mitzvah is a physical act, either by speaking words of Torah, by praying, or by doing something with action, giving tzedakah, lighting candles, right? Eating your matzah. It is the physical act, which is the Shekhinah that I'm trying to merge by me doing something physically that is rooted in the will of Hashem. I'm making that connection.
I have a question.
Can we? I want to finish the thing, if you don't mind,
Sure.
because we're trying to be in the flow here.
Sure.
Keep the question in. From one perspective, the physical act of a mitzvah is a worldly act, which, like everything in this world, is powered by the diminished energy of Shekhinah. But since the Torah, or mitzvah, which is taking place in this Shekhinah-powered world, also expresses the undiminished otherworldly light of God's will, there's emerging here of the worldly power you use to perform the mitzvah, which is otherworldly light, the divine will. And that's because the observance of Torah and mitzvahs pulls the undiminished, blessed, infinite light downwards into all the worlds, including this physical world, since the blessed infinite light is present within Torah and mitzvot. And at that level, at the level of personal kavanah, page 512, you would focus on how your being has become absorbed in God's undiluted will through the mitzvah. But the level of communal kavanah, your concern will be, how does the blessed infinite light, which I have pulled down with the mitzvah, affect the source of all souls of Israel? So you say, not only does it affect my soul, it also affects all the souls of Israel, which are all interconnected. How so? And when you observe Torah and mitzvahs, your kavanah should be that God's infinite light be pulled down into the worldly source of your soul and into the worldly source of all souls of Israel to merge them together. Since the source of all souls is Shekhinah, a veiled diminished energy, it benefits greatly from the illumination of the blessed infinite light caused by your mitzvah. So in addition to invigorating yourself through a mitzvah, you also bring light to the root of all souls. In order not to exclude yourself from the community, Tanya suggests you ought to have this in mind when you do the mitzvah. And as will be explained later at length, the meaning of the merging, look there. And this is the meaning, we'll skip to the next paragraph, and this is the meaning of the Kabbalistic Kavana set before the observance of mitzvahs that the worship is being done for the sake of the merging of the Blessed Holy One with His Shekhinah in the name of all Israel. If you pay attention in the Siddur, and many people say that before a blessing, before Baruch She'amar, we have our Siddur, but we say the Baruch She'amar, there's a little 2 lines we say quietly. And there it says, L'shem Yuchel Kutsha Bricha. Before I start praying, I say, this is exactly what it quotes over here. For the sake of the merging of the Blessed Holy One with His Shekhinah in the name of all Israel. So why am I invoking in the name of all Israel? So first of all, I'm making a mitzvah. I'm merging God's infinite essence, light, with the Shekhinah, with this physical world. In the name of all Israel. Why? So he says because in essence, when I do a mitzvah, it's my soul on fire, but my soul is interconnected with all the other souls. It affects the other souls, affects every other Jew in the world who is from the same source of the soul. And not only does it affect, I have an obligation to do a mitzvah, not only for my own sake, I have to do it for everyone else's sake. I have a communal responsibility. So he took the line from the Talmud, which is actually in Jewish law. Jewish law, there's a law. Al tifrosh min hatzibur. Do not separate yourself from the community. There's a community, there's certain communal responsibility that we have. These are obligations. It goes opposite of American society in a sense. In American society, it's all about me, my rights, right? We don't talk so much about communal obligation. We talk about communal, it's a nice thing, it's charitable. In Judaism, in Judaism, in Torah, it's an obligation. It's not optional. We have certain communal responsibility. For example, I know this is an example we sometimes do, but people don't appreciate the importance of it. Somebody passed away. No, let me read the next 2 paragraphs. I want to finish the Kabbalistic. Let's go practical. The last 2 paragraphs here, page 512 on the bottom. The brief Kabbalistic Kavanah sums up a whole discussion how do you say it in English? Second phrase. You are conscious that through the mitzvah, you're going to pull down the infinite light of the blessed infinite Holy One into the Shekhinah, thereby invigorating the souls of all Israel by connecting them with an otherworldly light. And this kavanah forms part of the second wing of every mitzvah. In our bird analogy, we talked about the bird analogy, that there's love and reverence, that are 2 wings that elevates our connection. If you don't have reverence and love, your mitzvah doesn't fly, it doesn't connect, it's meaningless. It's almost like it's not connecting to the infinite light. And 2 wings are going to speak. You need 2 wings to fly. 1 wing doesn't fly, which means you need to have reverence and love. You can't have one over the other. So we say the love of God is a feeling that you want to come close to God, and on the level of communal consciousness, it's a feeling that you want to draw the root of all souls close to God. Which means like this. Coming back to the example. Let's go simple. Bikucholu, right? What does bikucholu mean? The mitzvah to visit the sick. It's a nice thing to do, right? It's a mitzvah. It's not. The question is, who's obligated to do so? Who's obligated to visit the sick? Is it a family? Is it a friend? So in Jewish law, it is a communal responsibility that anybody who has a need, that the community must look out to ensure that we take collectively responsible to visit that person. That means, by definition, your existence as it being a member of the Jewish tribe comes with a lot of responsibilities. It's not optional. Now you can say, I have other priorities. There's the 630 mitzvahs, maybe what order of priority do I have to go? Because there's other mitzvahs, for example, somebody passed away. It is a communal responsibility that we bury him, that we give him a proper burial. It's a communal responsibility that there should be a minyan. It's a community responsibility that we go to a shiva house. I don't know the guy. I don't know the guy. What's my connection? Every soul in the Jewish tribe is so interconnected that we are responsible. If you want to be living to your own mission and purpose, that includes how we are responsible for each other. But spiritually talking, as we just explained this in the spiritual meditation, it now takes a whole deeper understanding. So if you only care about your own personal connection to Hashem, then you have missed the whole point. Then perhaps your true connection to Hashem is not really true. It's not true Ava and Yira. It's not true Kabbalah's all, because you missed an integral part of it. It's the balance. It's always a balance. All right. Now he's gonna before we continue. You had a question, Leona, and we'll get into I'm probably going to stop over here and continue next week. But what's your question?
I don't remember because we moved on, but this is really difficult, this whole community thing. It is not conducive to life. In today's world, let alone, this is where we live. Look at all these people that are on this Zoom. Who knows where they are, right? They're somewhere at home, and we all are watching, and if, God forbid, you have a need, if nobody calls in and says, oh, Rabbi, I need something, most of us don't even have family that check in and are you okay? Or God forbid something should happen. So it's, I don't know, the world is, how does one fulfill that if it's that critical?
Yeah. So that's a great question, and my response is it's not all or nothing. It's definitely not all or nothing, right? So it's everyone, whatever level they're at. First of all, it's an education thing, right? It's something that's very novel to a lot of people. This idea that we are responsible for each other, we're interconnected. Growing up in a very observant Jewish community, in a Torah education world, this is ABC of life. This is how we live life. That's what you go into in a very observant community. The community is so interconnected that there's always that support system. Somebody has a child, there's food being delivered, there's a bris being arranged, there's how can we help out, how can we, which comes with the blessing of a community, but more than just the blessing, the benefit of it comes with the responsibility as well. Somebody who posted this on the WhatsApp about this crazy story in New Jersey with a gas station. You see that? If it's true, I don't know. Somebody said a story was that an Orthodox Jew pulls into a gas station in New Jersey. Must be years ago. And the gas station attendant told the Orthodox Jew, what is up with you Jews? I just had a guy who came to fill up his tank. I asked him how much. He says, fill it up full. And before he had a chance to pay me, he pulls out. And he didn't pay me. So the Orthodox Jew feels like, oh my gosh, what a shanda. A fellow Jew would do such a thing. So he tells the gas attendant, here, charge my car double for me and I'll pay for the other guy. And he was very upset that a Jew would do such a thing. And turns out after a while that this gas station attendant was lying. To every Orthodox Jew that pulled in the gas station, he said the same story because he knew that the Jew would pay for the Jew who didn't pay.
Well, okay, kind of back to where I was, kind of back there, and something that perplexes me, and I don't know if it.
By the way, we're definitely not perfect. There's as with everything in the family, right? When we get too close, also there's a lot of fighting as well. Look at Israel, for example. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know it was back a few pages, so we're off of the community thing. If there's the inner soul, and then you're talking, when you were talking about the Shekhinah and the outer soul, and then the connection to that is through mitzvah. Well, is none of this brings in the physical body in which the inner soul in which it exists, right? I guess one of the things that
it's all about the body. It's all doing it within the
but
body.
then and forgive me, I see within this how few people take care of their physical body as though it is really the temple of God. And
It's American way.
just eating too, just the gluttony that I see in the eating too much or not taking the exercise or what it is you eat. I mean, all those things, are they just ignored?
Are there Beinoni? Are there Tzaddik? Are there Russia? What are they?
Oh, well, that's a whole.
Let's start with ourselves. Stop looking at others. Don't judge the Torah by the people that keep it. That's the expression. Don't judge the Torah by the people that keep it or supposedly keep it. Man. Everyone has their
all these things are so remote. I mean, even like the sense of community. I mean, you're from Brooklyn and I get it, but look at what a tiny speck in the world that community is, and considered kind of cultish, forgive me, and on the other hand, this doesn't maybe sound nice. I mean, they're dependent on the government. They don't go out and work.
Who are you talking about? Religious community?
Yeah.
You're making a very broad statement that is.
Is that not true?
I grew up in an observant community that 95% of people work really, really hard. Other people
They
that
work outside the community? I thought they studied Torah all day and
Leona, with all due respect, I have to push back. It's wrong information. It's offensive, and I think it's something that maybe the liberal media likes you to absorb. I'll invite you to come to Brooklyn, and you see that it's a very prosperous community. People work really hard in the community and out of the community. There's institutions, there's doctors, there's lawyers, there's real estate, there's so many different industries. There are some industries that Orthodox Jews are more inclined to go into, maybe because they didn't sit in college all their life. They went to yeshiva and have different aspiration or want to have more flexibility in their religious lifestyle. For example, there's a lot more entrepreneurs in the Orthodox community than in the non-Orthodox community, by far. People who own businesses, who want to be their own bosses. Real estate. One of the strong, successful businesses in New York and Chicago, the observant communities, they're going into real estate because you can be your own boss, like yourself, right? So that's not the. It's not true. Now, if you remember, there are always going to be people who are dependent on who don't make it in life, and that's why the government is here to assist them, and that's fine. And there's a lot of large families, Orthodox families, and maybe they fall into more government assistance than others. But it's completely untrue to the statement you said earlier at all. You know that majority of Amazon sellers are Orthodox Jews. Did you know that? You didn't know that. If you go to an Amazon conference, you'll see the amount of Orthodox Jews that are there, because it's a very it's a hard industry, but again, it's entrepreneurial. So that's it. But Leona got to make a trip to New York. Go ahead. Yeah.
It's actually not a question. I listened to an interview of a leader of American liberal Jews. I forgot his name. And he stated the main difference between Israel and American liberal Jews. He said Israel is all about the state. The first priority is the state of Israel. And in America, everyone is for themselves. They take the opportunity and then develop, take whatever is